Welcome to Underqualified Thoughts, where two brothers-in-law have conversations stemming from their daily life. Expect nothing, everything, and anything. All right, so we're back into podcast number 2. We have a lot of things to talk about today, and hopefully they'll be somewhat connected.
Especially since podcast number 2 is a loose, potentially inaccurate title for this one.
Technically, this is podcast number 4, but you never heard 2 and 3.
They don't know about that.
You don't need to know about that.
Except we're probably going to talk about that right now.
Here we are. Go away with it, Andy.
So, well, I guess we can just talk about the first podcast because we listened back to it, kind of like an athlete who watches film after a performance. What did you think of it? I thought we had there are definitely areas where we could have done better, but I thought there were some high highs.
Yeah, if we want to do the sandwich, I think the good thing was we did it. Complete is always better than perfect, in my opinion. So we did it. The downside was, my personal opinion was the audio was trash. Like, it was really, really bad.
Is that why I'm holding a phone in my hand right now?
And that's why we were
holding a phone in your hand.
We were both holding phones in our hands right now, talking into them. Before, we just had one phone on the table, and you could hear us sometimes, but it wasn't very clear audio.
Not only that, you could hear the creaky chair, which probably you'll still hear in this one. But I also heard a few times where I picked up my water bottle, drank, and then I put it back down because it was sitting on the desk.
I would rather hear us almost breathing than hear the random sounds around and hear it clearly.
Breathing,
yeah, I'd rather be able to hear clarity rather than.
I was waiting for you to take a big breath in the
I
microphone.
really thought about blowing into it.
What is I can't remember what that song is. The one that starts.
No,
I can't remember the name of that song.
Anyway, so that was the downside for me. Just the audio was really bad. Did you have any downsides?
Yeah, I know I have a problem enunciating, but it was clear in some of them. When I start a thought, and I'm sure it's going to happen a lot going forward because it's a habit, I start talking way faster in the beginning because I have this, whatever thought of what I'm going to say. And here's an example of it. I have a few thoughts that I want to say like that. I start talking really fast in the beginning, just because I'm just dumping the thought out, and then I slow down and speak. Not on purpose, mainly because I don't think that much before I speak. So it's the parts I did think about go out of my head, go out of my mouth really fast, and then it's
yeah, then it slows down.
Slows down as I'm kind of thinking and speaking at the same time.
Yeah, it's again, underqualified thoughts. This is a great opportunity to have a case in point. I mean, if we're trying to create a new podcast, there's going to be learning curves.
And some would say we are underqualified.
Exactly.
Make this podcast.
Case in point. So let's go ahead and just talk through what are we doing now, since this is technically the 4th recording, and we're skipping past 2 and 3. So
are we? Yeah, we can dive into what 2 and 3 were like. Just they're in the archive. You'll probably never see them.
You'll never see them. Unless, there's no unless. There's no way.
Unless you give us a gift card, there's no way you see them.
First person to say that you're going to buy me a $10 Starbucks gift card.
$10? You went from it's never going to happen to $10 for one.
Hey, I'll send someone an audio file.
What were you in?
So
not pumpkin spice latte. Which one were you talking about
yesterday? It was pumpkin cream. I love that cold brew over there at Starbucks. So back on track. You know that we ended, last time we spoke was we ended with a hard cut, which actually it finished pretty well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. That was actually pretty good.
You're welcome.
But some various chaos pursued that thought in episode 2 and 3.
Yes. While the hard cut I think is good, what was not good is that I don't think I told you I was planning on hard cutting, or maybe I did and you thought I was joking, because then when we recorded the second episode, about 15 minutes in, when we had barely scraped the surface of what we were talking about, you tried to hard cut. And there's this maybe we'll release it as a clip one day of me just frantically begging you not to cut it because I had so many more things to say that 60 seconds to maybe 2 minutes of audio is probably like the most chaotic thing that we've ever done.
It was bad.
Which is funny. Like, it might have been funny to listen back to. I thought releasing episode 2 would have been okay. I personally, episode 3 was the one that I didn't like more, but you were the opposite.
And
You were,
yeah, I was the opposite. I thought 2 was the one that was extremely all over the place, and 3 was actually kind of okay. I think my biggest thing is the question: is this bringing value to anyone? Like just anyone that's listening. I'm trying to help us stay away from just the chatter that goes endlessly, and so that at some points we do talk about something that's relevant, and that's why we have the structure today.
So my question in that is, there are different thoughts of like when you make content, of like who you should make it for, who you target audience should be for, and then there's like a thought where you should just make it for one person. Like, we are going to make it for the one person who has these interests and has this amount of time to listen and these desires and things they want to learn. But what about the thought of we don't have to consider it adding value to other people, just that, is it something valuable for us to do? What do you think about that?
So that is true, and I mean that's like my own words regarding LinkedIn.
Oh my gosh.
I just had to get it in.
See, here's
the first
here's
10
the
minutes.
problem. I know to have a good podcast, I need to engage with you and ask you questions, but I know like whatever high percentage of the time I ask you a question, you're going to circle it back to LinkedIn.
Okay, so the reason why I'm saying it is, again, I do agree that most of the podcasts here are, like we've said before, a time capsule, and then exchanging thoughts. So if we're not bringing value to other people, it's not like there's this non-negotiable of, hey, we're just not going to do it. I think we're still having value here, just like hanging out, talking.
Yeah. And it'll give our kids material to laugh at us when we're older.
Yes, Lily, and future child whose name I don't know yet.
Well, you haven't decided.
I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Haven't decided. We haven't even, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so the second and third were scrapped. And we are attempting to move into other things now.
What's funny about the second and third being scrapped is when you made I can't remember what you just said, but you made like some reference to something that we said earlier, which obviously is a great thing, like to string a thread through something both for humor and for remembering something. But as soon as you said it, whatever it was, I was like, did we say that in episode 1? Or was that episode 2? Or was it 3? Are we like making these like haha jokes that like people haven't heard before?
Wait, we did actually.
In the first one?
No, yeah, about the gift card thing?
No, the gift card one I know was in the first one. It was something you just said that I can't remember.
I thought it was in the second.
The gift card.
I really thought the gift card was in the second.
The gift card one, we made more jokes.
Okay.
Like, we built on it.
Well, good news is no one's come collecting yet.
Maybe you didn't. For context, if we haven't said it, Caleb made a joke that if you've made it this far, I'll give you a gift card. And then I repeated that joke later in whatever episode it was. Or maybe I repeated that joke in whatever the second or the third scrapped episode was.
Now, I will say, going forward into this properly second recording on Spotify, we had
Apple and anywhere.
Well, I still have to hit that button. Sorry. No. We received some feedback from a listener that basically said, "Hey, it was good, but it would be even better if you spend more time explaining things."
You mean my wife?
And it is his wife.
Literally, this was like a moment of. That's why I described it as watching film, because when you're watching film for a sport, like, you're watching it and obviously you see the things that you do really well and you can see the things where you messed up, but then you have someone beside you who's objectively like, don't do that, do that.
Yeah.
And so I sat beside watching it with Caitlin, and she was just like, Like, there were times where I did something and she was just like, I was like, no, what do you mean? Sheila was just like, you cut off Caleb there. You got to ask him a question back. I was like, what? We weren't watching this to get critiqued. But, I mean, it's obviously helpful, and I don't think she's doing it vindictively to tear me down. So
no.
Let's to get better.
I think this is a good, productive thing, and
we can grow as people because of it or something.
We'll come out with some philosophy later about it. The growth.
So to build a philosophy off of it, we've spent who knows how long. You're looking at the time, are you? You got a timestamp?
10 minutes.
We spent roughly 10 minutes talking about 2 episodes that we scrapped. Haven't even addressed what the 3rd episode was about. We can just bury that one forever. But like, what's the value of us talking about this for 10 minutes?
Well, I think the value of us talking about this is our transparency. That's semi a buzzword and might be one of those
Oh, that's a buzzword for sure.
words like authentic or real. But like all of us, we need to be able to reflect on our mistakes and even things that aren't, it wasn't necessarily a mistake. It's just we know we could do better. And
I think it was we weren't proud of it for whatever reason, whether it was like we thought it would make us look bad or we knew that we didn't put our best feet forward.
yeah.
I mean, our collective feet.
Yeah. So yeah, I think the value there is just that we're sharing that with you. Well, assuming there's someone on the other side again.
Assuming at least 5 people are listening.
At least
last
5.
time.
Yeah. We did some metrics and it said that 10 people listened. Now, I think there's some robots in there as well.
Well, also the question is, I accidentally, when Caitlin and I were watching it, I tried to rewind 15 seconds because I wanted to listen to a part again, and I accidentally restarted the episode. So I'm like, I want to go look at it and say, how many unique viewers are it? Because I technically listened to it twice.
Yeah. But yeah, like if you're listening, that value is that we just want to grow, and this is a great opportunity to recognize that, as all of us should whenever we run into a situation that we did something wrong or something that was challenging. We should always be reflecting, and that's actually is now a good time to segue into the projects, because there's actually a really cool segue we could do here.
Potentially. That was a good soapbox moment for you. You turned that and were like, this is what we're doing, and you as well can join us on this journey.
Yeah. Well, and that's that. I'll say one thing. I'm trying to like interact with Andy as though he's like conversation here. I do tend to.
That is, we talked about it in the first episode, I think, and I talked about it with Caitlin a lot. She's like, Caitlin, my wife, when we were listening, she's like, it sounds like Caleb is actually trying to host and have a podcast and you're just being chaotic. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of our thing.
Yeah.
That's our default. Like, your default is to make it a smooth flowing, logically progressing, smooth and easy to listen to piece of audio and content. And I'm over here just with chaotic energy, like messing with you like I normally do.
Which it fits perfect because of our graphic. me squinting at you and you just
that's what that was.
Life.
To talk about the graphic, that was a huge thing I pushed for. Was you, I think, had initially done yourself squinting, and then when you put us behind the desk, you weren't squinting.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. I need to have this like boyish, goofy grin of like, I'm up to no good, and you're just squinting at me trying to process what's going on and whether or not this was a good idea to do a podcast with me.
I think it fits. So
fits our personalities for sure. The question is, how much of our personalities do we need to put to the side to make something that people are actually willing to listen to?
And I think today is I think so far we're on the right track.
I still have a bit of the chaotic energy. And that's what, to put the seal on episode 2 and 3 that they'll never hear. And no matter how many gift cards they give you, and seamlessly transition beautifully, is that we're not going to cut out the chaos. Like I can't cut out all my chaotic energy. I'm still going to cut you off at times, but I'm just going to try and grow and like having it be less of that, more back and forth with timely chaotic interruptions.
I think we've stumbled upon possibly the greatest title this podcast has ever seen.
What? Chaos? Pure chaos?
No. It's, ready for it? When to resurrect something. And this is the segue straight into the next topic. Unlike the podcast, episodes 2 and 3, that we have decided not to resurrect, we're not going to show them to you guys. Unlike that, there are certain items in our lives that might not have intrinsic value, but we resurrect them. And so we're going to transition into this, what we'll call the bike situation with Andy. Something that was resurrected, possibly not incredibly intrinsically valuable to him, but let's talk about it. Talk about this bike situation we have.
Before I can talk about this bike situation, I absolutely need to address the irony in the room of when you said, I have a title, and you said when to resurrect something. I could not have squinted at you harder and for longer than I ever have. And immediately after talking about how you're the squinting one, I just squinted at you for potentially a minute straight.
I was just trying to stay focused.
You did. You did a good job of holding it together. You did a few like hold in chuckles where you pulled the microphone away, but that was a lot. We'll process it. We'll talk in post if that's the best title, but it's a good working one for now.
It's resurrection.
Okay. So what Caleb is referring to is, as long as I can remember, or I guess as far as I can look back to little Andy and his hopes and dreams, one of his small hopes and dreams was to have a beach cruiser. My mom was born and raised in California. I was born there, moved away pretty much immediately. Like I think I was like a year and a half old, and I've spent most of my life on the East Coast. I'm giving all that context because I think that's where some of this root came from, like the California roots and the California dreams to have a beach cruiser. But I never got one growing up. It's not like I didn't have a bike. I just didn't have a beach cruiser. And we moved back to Charlotte, my wife and I was like, I'm getting my bike. I haven't I thought about it. There hadn't really been practical, but we moved pretty close to our church, pretty close to where like we get our groceries, and Caitlin works from home, and like we're really close to uptown. So uptown Charlotte, that is, if we ever get to the point where someone outside of our small friend group listens to this. It was time to get the bike. I knew, and so I just went search on Craigslist for a beach cruiser. And yeah, I think I was in between getting a really expensive one that was like a couple $100 and all this stuff. I ended up getting a real rinky-dink one that was $40 with one of the tires busted, which leads us into the story we're about to talk about of resurrecting it, or more closely restoring it.
Oh yeah. So obviously bikes like brand new at Walmart or anywhere like that is halfway okay is like $300 to $600. And then you'll find them like on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace for like, I don't know, how much did you get yours for?
I got mine for $40, but that was like the absolute cheapest one that I could find because the tire was busted and like I think the stitching on the seat's coming off, and if you wanted to buy a used one, it'd still be like over $100.
Yeah, so like a decently used one, like $100, whatever, broken down, old, $40. But you saw this bike and you were like, that's the one.
I don't know if I was quite like, this is it, like beacon of hope, this is where we're going. But I knew I had you in my back pocket, the man who has 2 sheds/shops in your backyard, grew up building houses with your family, and a freaking tree branch fell on one of your sheds and you got up there and fixed it yourself. You repaired the roofing.
Forgot about that.
So I was like, if we weren't related, I would not have bought this bike because I wouldn't have been able to do anything with it.
You would have just picked another bike that was working.
I would have had to. So like the fact that it was expensive wasn't the problem. The fact was that like I know I'm paying for convenience. Like I would have been paying for convenience looking for a bike that has every single thing I want, like the bike rack I want, the color I want, the style of wheels I want, obviously beach cruiser, the frame I want. But because I knew I had Caleb do-it-yourself Youngblood in my back pocket, in my Rolodex, in my phone, and you love doing projects, I was like, okay, I have the option now to buy a cheap bike and fix it.
So what things did you have to sacrifice in order to make that decision? Obviously, the biggest thing would be like, you're saving a lot. I mean, money.
At the end of the day,
are you?
At the end of the day, I knew I wasn't saving money because I was doing the research of, I knew I would have to buy new tires. It didn't come with a rack in the back, which is what I wanted. So I needed to buy that. I knew I'd have to replace the bike seat. I knew I'd have to, or the plan was to paint it. And so I knew at the end of the day, I wasn't going to be saving money. But I have this. Recently, we were asked in our young adults group at church, like just one of those icebreaker questions, like what's one skill that you want to learn? I don't know if I'm going to go all in on it, but I definitely have the idea of like I want to be at least a basic do-it-yourselfer, like more so than just like replacing a light bulb. Like I still don't want to mow my own yard when we have a yard. Like either my kids are going to do it, I'm going to pay a service to do it, or I'm going to automate a lawnmower. But as far as like, I'm thinking like fun, creative, do-it-yourself projects. Like, oh, we're going to like do this thing to our wall, or we're going to like be a part of fixing or renovating something in our house. Not like a high level renovation, probably like painting or something. Or I'm going to get a crappy bike and make it into a cool looking bike.
This is groundbreaking, in my opinion. I've never heard you say that.
Well, I mean, why would you have heard me say it?
I don't know. Every time, so just context.
Actually, you know why? Like, I'll let you respond, but probably how you're going to respond is why I haven't said it to you. Because you are going to sink your teeth into this and be like, let's go every Saturday. Come on up to China Grove. Let's get this done.
I got a lot of projects.
Exactly. The only other person I've told this to was like, hey, I have projects around my house you can help me with. I'm like, no, that's not the point.
That's so funny. It sounds like you're wanting to approach it in a more hobbyist, like not just you want to stay away from need-based fixing, which none of us want to do, because fixing stuff based on need is like, they're the projects that take the longest.
Yes.
They're like unenjoyable.
Our father-in-law, trained electrical engineer, he's doing the need-based electrical work around his house.
Right.
I have no desire to do that.
And I don't want to do that either. Like, they're just, I know I have projects around the house even that I know I need to do, but I just haven't gotten to. Whereas projects like Andy's bike are like so much more fun because I want to do that.
And it leaves your shop floor stained green.
Yeah. But yeah, the thing is I've never heard Andy say anything about wanting necessarily just to dive straight into like a hobby project like that, even if it is more of the fun sort. So like back to the sacrifice thing about like, what did you sacrifice in doing this project? Like on your own or even with me?
Time, obviously. Like I still don't have a bike. That's the ideal bike that I want. And I bought it July, maybe. And we're in mid-October. Most of that has just been because I'm like trying to pace myself and not just buying like, I can see something that I really want. It's like, okay, do I like actually need that? Like I want to replace the bike seat because it looks really ugly, but am I replacing it because it looks really ugly, or am I replacing it because like it's not functional and it's not working and I can't like, find a way to reupholster it or something? And then I think just the other sacrifice was time, and it is, so that's why I had already mentioned, but the other sacrifice is money. It's going to cost more. I realized it while I was doing my research. It's going to cost more, but it's going to be more spread out. It basically was my option was, do I want to spend $300 and $400 today and get a bike that I like, I'd have to spend a ton of money to get the perfect thing that I wanted, because, at that point you're getting it customized and that costs a lot of money. But I knew buying the cheap $40 bike, I looked at how much tires are going to cost. I was shocked at how much spray paint we needed. We ended up spending a ton of money on spray paint because I think I needed like 6 or 7 cans of the green that we used for the body. And then you convinced me to paint the wheels white. And so I had to end up buying like 3 or 4 cans for that. And then just all the other things you need, like, a bike lock and all the other random stuff. So that was time and money for sure. And then it's not a sacrifice, but it opens myself up to more self-doubt. Because if I'm buying something that someone else made and I end up not liking it, someone else made it. But if I do all of this work on the project and there's any part of it that I don't like, I'm the one who did it. I'm the one who decided to get a project. I'm the one who made the decisions along the way of what to do with it. And now I'm the one who has to look at like the dings and the scratches and the things that didn't turn out as I wanted it and know that I either bit off more than I can chew or I wasn't skilled enough to get it done.
Yeah. I think there's this thought that I'm going to try to piece together here that's a little bit philosophical.
I knew it. That's
it's philosophical. But I think that whenever you value something highly and you're willing to put in, my dad calls it the sweat equity, for that value to be realized, to come to fruition. I think that when we do those things, though, and it turns out correctly, there's so much that we learn from it and grow from it, and inevitably we'll value even higher than original. So, great example there, again, just with the bike. You value that bike way more than maybe just a $300 bike from Walmart because you know what went into it. Even if there's things about it that you wish you had done better, you know that you can go back and redo eventually if you wanted, or just say, next time I have a project of this caliber or more, I can learn from it and do it in these fashions instead. Very similar again to our podcast 2 and 3, where we recognize the mistakes, and the mistakes are big enough that we want to go back and redo. The same situation is here. You can choose to go back and redo it if those mistakes are high enough. For now, I think the bike looks great. But way better than it was before.
Definitely way better than it was before. But what's hard is all that is true is like when it turns out, quote unquote, the way you wanted it or better than it was before. There is a lot of like you're proud of it. Like when I drive up our parking garage and I drive past and I see my bike and it's the bike that objectively looks the best in the rack of bikes. I get a moment of yes, I did that. But then what sucks is that the lows are even lower, which is kind of what I was mentioning earlier. When I see that, I scraped off some of the paint because I wasn't careful with where I put the bike lock or whatever happened there. It hits something and then the handlebars that are white gets a black scuff on it that I can't get off. And then, which is even worse, unrelated to me doing it myself, I underestimated how hard it is to ride a single speed bike in any amount of incline. I'm my legs are not beefy whatsoever, but I'm in good shape. I can ride a bike. I can be winded and keep going. But I didn't realize we don't live on a steep hill, but we live on a hill here. And it's hard riding the bike around right now as a single speed bike. I prepared for that going in. I know that you're able to convert it to a multi-gear bike. That's just a really elaborate and expensive process. But what sucks is when I ride the bike and my legs are burning and it's really hard to breathe. All I can think about are the few people who are who tried to warn me, I suppose, whether sincerely or kind of mockingly, oh, you're getting a single speed bike. Okay, have fun. I then got that no, I can do that. I got more excited or more stuck in the idea. And so what sucks now is when I look at the bike from far away, I love it. It's awesome. I'm this is an amazing project. What you said, I can learn a lot from it going into projects going forward. But what sucks is when I ride the bike, it's hard. It's painful. And I know if I do it more, I'll get better at it. But it's kind of do I want to keep riding the bike if it's causing me this much strife and struggle and toil?
Yeah, I agree. And I think all of us at some point, even the listeners, have something that they can probably relate to in that, something they've worked on or done in the past that didn't exactly end up as much as they had hoped. Anyway, that was pretty good.
Not bad. I think I rambled a little long in the beginning when I was setting up. I'm also a rambler, for those who don't know me. Not concise with words. Unless I'm writing. When I write, I can be concise. But when I'm talking, it's stream of consciousness. I didn't think before I was speaking. I'm externally processing. And so if you noticed, at one point I paused for a long time because I was I've been talking for too long. I need to pause for Caleb to jump in. And you didn't jump in. I was well, gotta keep going.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that was pretty good. And we're rolling up here on 30 minutes. So how do we want to end this? Do we just say goodbye to the people?
Who, the people?
The people. We have to say goodbye to them at least.
Come on. I'm having a conversation with you. I'm not talking to the people.
Well, I'm not going to say goodbye to you.
Why not?
Because
we're going to record episode 3 right after this.
Well,
Well,
I
who
guess
knows? We might have lunch first.
we might. We'll let you know. How about that?
And before we leave, so we can close this on, we didn't talk. We talked about the lows of the first episode. Do you know what was a hilarious high for me?
What's
The part that I told you I went back, I tried to go back and re-listen to. This was hilarious. You said something in the podcast. You referred to like Lily as the kid or whatever phrase you used. And there's this vine that was in my head where one of the lines in it is the child. Or I think it's a child.
Yeah.
So when you said the kid, I muttered to myself, like when I was listening back to the podcast and I heard you say the kid again, I muttered the child. And in my brain, I was like, man, I'm surprised I didn't do that. Not like I wish I'd surprised I didn't do that in the podcast. And then as soon as I finished saying the child to myself, I heard myself in the background of the podcast saying it, and I lost it. It was so funny because my brain was like, honestly, I do that all the time when someone says that. I'm shocked I didn't do it in the podcast. And then I heard it and I was cracking up. Caitlin was like shaking her head at me, like a mixture of like, that's funny, but I'm also disappointed in you. And I was like cracking up.
I'm sure there's a ton of things that we do in this thing that we don't realize we're doing.
No, there's so many autopilot like responses that you have. Like I've noticed a lot where if someone's telling me a story that I'm not really interested in, or I'm either not really interested in or I'm not fully focused, I'll just say that's wild. Kind of like you saying that's right.
Yeah, that is true.
Like we kind of have like filler. And what's great is when your wife picks up on it and she's like, you just said that's wild to me. I'm like, what? Like I didn't realize I wasn't paying attention. And then she realizes before me I wasn't paying attention. Yeah. And then it's just like, oh no, what have I done?
Well, I guess we'll conclude this podcast here. Thanks for listening if you're listening.
They're probably not listening.
Goodbye.